Today, I have another amazing guest on the Stories of Service podcast, and it's now going to be the second time that I've had a Gold Star mom on the podcast. And these are very hard shows to do, but they're very important because the military doesn't always take care of our soldiers the way that we would like. And when they don't do that, we need to talk about it. I always say we need to talk about hard issues. This is one of those hard issues. So, Heather Baker, how are you doing today?
Hey, how are you? I'm doing good. It's an honor to be here to speak with all of you guys, and it's never something that we want to have to talk about. Death is not something that we want to vibe on. When we're talking about the military, but I feel like there's a lot of uh, blind patriotism, I guess.
Right.
And I've kind of had an experience with myself, just having that. Blind patriotism, and Caleb the same way. My son Caleb, um, you know, um, just as I'm thinking back, it's been 6 years this January, um, and he wanted to go in like at 17, so and I was a very supportive mom. Uh, Wanted to have his back, to do, we just want him to have his dream. All of our service members, many of them are, fresh out of high school. And it's all about, finding your way, and Caleb from the very beginning knew what his way was, And so it's something that we all had, watched him discover in himself. And here we are, we're walking in to the fray with them, and
Right.
it's what we do as parents is we take, love our kids, we back our kids, we support our kids. And so, here I am, continuing on just to speak on his behalf, speak for the dead. And more importantly, I think it's important to take care of the people around you,
Right.
and I've been a teacher. This is the first year I haven't taught in 22 years, but uh, this is my new way of discovering myself again after all of this craziness, but I'm doing pretty good, through all of it. It's been 6 years. I can't believe it. It's like I went to sleep and woke up and 6 years passed,
Yeah.
and I'm about to head. I've been doing a lot of dog training with the ranch in Dilley, Texas, and um, I've got a event coming up in February, which is Caleb was buried February 1st in Lubbock, um, and so I'm going to be heading back there to receive an honor and remember flag from an organization called Honor and Remember. And so I'm excited to, kind of honor, the hard work that we've done to create a net of safety for
Right.
our service members, and not just the Army. It's so important to me to make sure that all of our service members, because along the way, I've met many other Gold Star moms, and many of them have had non-combat deaths just like mine. Similarly, been exposed to toxic abusive leadership in the military. Caleb was completely left behind, which goes against the very tenets of the Army,
Right.
their standard policies. And so,
Yeah.
I just ask myself, like, what is at the core of it, and I think about technology and where we are here, um, having to connect through technology, and we think that's a way to check on people, and we've forgotten our human connection.
Absolutely.
So
I agree.
anyway,
No, no, no. I agree with you. And I think that what you're doing now today to bring some meaning to this and to share your story in the hopes that this doesn't happen to another soldier again is something that
Absolutely.
needs to be commended. But before we get started, as I always do, welcome to the Stories of Service podcast, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. I'm the host of Stories of Service. And to get this podcast started, as we always do, an introduction from my father, Charlie Pickard.
From the moment we're born and lock eyes with our parents, we are inspiring others. By showing up as a vessel of service, we not only help others, we help ourselves. Welcome to S.O.S, Stories of Service, hosted by Teresa Carpenter, here from ordinary people from all walks of life who have transformed their communities by performing extraordinary work.
That's my
Wow,
father.
that was beautiful.
And as I said, as I think my audience can tell in your introduction, is that you probably never intended to become an advocate. You were very patriotic as a mother, an artist, a professional musician, an educator,
Yeah.
as you said, who spent more than 2 decades teaching art and special education. And then the military
Yes.
failed your son,
Yeah.
PB2 Caleb Smither, and the trajectory of your life fractured into something far more confrontational and far more necessary. But in the aftermath of this tragedy, they have ruled a case of negligent homicide and medical malpractice. You refused to accept silence as an outcome. You rebuilt yourself in unexpected ways, becoming a competitive shooter and a professional dog trainer, which are disciplines that demand precision, accountability, and trust. And those same traits are now defining the advocacy you do today. And as you've said, you define yourself as a justice vigilante, not because of seeking vengeance, but because
Right.
systems that escape scrutiny will always repeat their worst mistake. And today we're going to talk about that and the SMIDI Check initiative. But before we get started, where were you guys born and raised, and where did he join the Army out of?
Well, Caleb was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, and along with myself. We're, generations of Lubbockites, I
Mhm.
guess, the home of Buddy Holly and Texas Tech Red Raiders. Um, but Caleb went to a high school that was a smaller community just right off of Lubbock, called Wolfforth. It's just like a hop, skip, and a jump across the tracks. And it's a smaller community, probably about like eight, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 middle schools, and then like
Mhm.
they had one big high school, and so um, he had a chance to like visit all the different middle schools. um, and so by the time he got to high school, everybody knew him. And so he was just a very fun-loving, humorous, uh, beautiful, like kid, man. He
Yeah.
loved everybody, and everybody just had a real keen affection towards him because he just was one of those guys that loved everybody, that accepted every different social, um, you know, um, different people.
Sure,
Um,
sure. And when
and
he,
so
what made him decide to join the Army?
Well, I think he comes from a tradition of military in our family. My dad was in the military. He was a Marine, and he was also in the Air Force. And my granddad, he was in the military. Um, and I think that, he grew up very patriotic. We wouldn't miss any events that, like 4th of July, the parade and everything, just we were always putting up a flag for every opportunity we could put up a flag for, and just really had a lot of love for our country. And he grew up admiring the heroes around him. Um, many of them were, in the military. And so he just he he had a real heart for people, and so it's kind of his way, I think, to get involved. I think we kind of build kids up, in education. It's kind of a thing to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and put your hand over your heart, and pledge your faith and love to the country that you're born in. And so he just wanted to, he'd always wanted to be in the military. He wanted to be a soldier man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what did he join the Army to do? What was his job?
He was a 91 Lima track line mechanic.
Okay.
So he worked on uh, the last vehicle he worked on was called a Deuce, an M105 earth mover. So
All right.
he he'd always actually wanted to be a marine biologist, but
Sometimes
I
life
live in
takes you on
Florida,
another
and
path,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. Well, I think it's a way, for you to explore the world. If you join the military, you have have lots of opportunity, to see the world and
Yeah,
adventure. It's an
absolutely.
adventure. And he was into like more of the special forces kind of route. He's super athletic and an amazing runner. Like he pretty much never lost a race, and most of the time came in right on top. And so we were real proud of him. He was, like I said, he was super athletic. He was 13 points away from a perfect PT score in the Army.
Wow.
And he didn't last but for 7.5 months. But to me, I'm like, wow, that shows a lot of determination, because he's in there. Went to basic training, then AIT, and then to airborne school off to Fort Benning.
Hmm.
And it was so special for me to see him shine,
Sure.
and to to see him envision his life and career. And he was in it for the long haul, and had plans. Everybody has plans to be in the ranger, be a ranger, or the green beret or whatever. But and there's only the few that get to
Sure.
really serve in those posts. But I feel that if he had have been if he had lived, he certainly would have followed that route. I mean, he was already airborne after 7 months. I think that takes a lot of courage to go and try to do something like that, because man, you're with so many different MOSs and uh, ranks from
Sure.
the
I mean, those are
PV
the
rank
hardest
all the way
jobs.
to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I said those are like the hardest jobs. I mean, you always have
Yeah.
to have a lot of respect for the people that choose the most difficult assignments. So tell me a little bit about like where he was around the time that this incident happened. Was he on base, or tell me a little bit about the story behind it?
Yes, ma'am. He was on base. He had his CID investigation has a lot of um, there's a lot of really it's um, what am I trying to say? His CID investigation um, really spoke volumes of what was really happening. So there's like, so much, first of all, redacted information, but, you know, the information we were getting, you would read in one section, and then in another section, it would be completely like opposite, And so it was like really hard to kind of piece it all together and put it together from beginning to end. But he, he had hit his head on a trackline vehicle, working in the motor pool. And I think it was kind of more of like a red herring. So it wasn't really what the trouble was at all. Him hitting his head had actually nothing to do with his death. What happened was um, somehow he contracted acute bacterial meningitis. Um, and it was misdiagnosed in the ER at Fort Bragg, which was his first and final duty station. And he contracted this, somehow, which we're still trying to figure out, like how. I think I know how. Um, if you just do your investigation, if you type in certain things like uh, gram rod bacteria, it tells you like kind of what that is exactly. And you're given, I'll tell you this, you're given like uh, uh, vaccines for these types of things sometimes. So anyway,
Wow.
he
So were you
contracted.
notified that he had hit his head? Like, when did you get notified that he was hurt?
Um, it wasn't until after he had died, actually. So, he hit his head. Let's say it was like on the, I think it was the 13th of January. And then, a little bit later, he started feeling like, he started experiencing a major headache, where he couldn't see. And he missed formation. They went and got him out of his room. He had called, like I think the night before, he'd called one of his friends, a young lady, letting her know that he had hit his head, or that he wasn't feeling well. And we actually have the audio to that. And when I heard the audio to that, it broke my heart, because he's crying and suffering and pain, and he's saying it hurts so bad. And
Was he in? So he lived in the barracks at the time.
he did.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so the barracks, so his room was basically had a had a communal living quarters, like uh, it's like the
I know.
kitchen
I know what you're talking about. A
area.
shared
Yeah,
kitchen, and then there's rooms on all
yeah,
each sides. Hmm.
exactly. And then a shared bathroom, And so um, he uh, he was, the last time he entered his room was, I think, the 15th of January. Um, and he, they have a key card entry that time stamps like their last moments, or his, each time you go in and out of the room. And so we have timestamp. I have on his Facebook page, I have a calendar that has all the events and everything. I can send that to you so that you and your viewers can check it out. But it has like, the entire um, I guess the events leading up and at post uh, death as well. But so he the 15th of January, he enters his room, and the last time anybody hears from him, is in through like a text message. He'd gone to the ER twice. It said he'd been turned away from the Womack Army Medical Center. Um, so I say 3 times. So he was turned away, and then he went 2 other consecutive times. But his command, they had loose orders to check on him, even after he had gone to the ER for that third time. And of course, they say that he was never turned away from the Womack Army Medical Center. But throughout the CID investigation, several people are telling me this, and I even called to confirm it with some other folks on his team, and they all told me that he had been turned away
So
from the
he
Womack Army
he
Medical Center
he
first
found a
time.
way to make it on his own to the medical center, and then he.
He he had, I think there was somebody that took him, here's the deal, is that nobody really is saying anything about that. That was a big question I had, is like,
Yeah, who
who
took
took
him?
him, because here's the deal, he's a kid that didn't have a car,
Right.
and he's on a big military base. I mean, Fort Bragg takes up over, what, 3 counties? Something like that. It's giant, I mean, it's the home of the
Mhm.
special forces, for crying out loud.
Sure. So
Yeah.
obviously there was another person who was involved in him being
Yeah, in that
admitted or
portion of
trying.
it, and so we have documentation of some other folks driving him to and fro the Womack Army Medical Center when he finally got in, and you know, I wouldn't say really checking on him, just following orders to take him there and to bring him back. I mean, he could not keep down water. He didn't have an appetite. Um, Later on, we did discover that his vital signs got worse instead of better. I mean, I had to uncover this through getting his real medical records. So there's the medical records they give you, and then there's the medical records,
Wow.
with all the notes and everything. And so I had to get Congress involved to help me get that information. But when we finally got it, it just told a story, of negligence, medical malpractice. The nurse that had helped him that very last time in the hospital. Um, she had written some notes saying that he had his vital signs had gotten worse, and that the doctor um, sent him home anyway. And she had written in her own words, that she thought that it was, strange or whatever, that he didn't keep him.
Approximately how many days was it? And you don't have to give me exact timelines, but
It's about
like,
6.5 days.
okay, so this was playing on from when he initially hit his head to going in and out, trying to be seen at the hospital. This was about a
So
6-day process.
no, it was from the time he entered his room, the very last time, until the time they found him was 6.5 days.
Wow. Okay. So how
Mhm.
many days was it from when he hit his head to, okay, that's just the initial
I think it
thing
would
that,
have been like a week or so.
so about a week
Um,
he's not going into work, and he's tried 2 or 3 times or a number of times to go to Womack
no,
Army.
it's from the time he hit his head until the time he started feeling the nausea, the major headaches. He had to wear like night vision goggles just to step outside of his room. He basically was blind. He couldn't see anything. And so from the time he hit his head, which I said before, it was a red herring. It
Mhm.
didn't have anything to actually do with how he got meningitis. Um, we're still like wondering how that actually happened, because there was no prophylactic needed on base
Mhm.
after nobody else came down with acute bacterial meningitis. And if they did, they would have needed a prophylactic to keep from getting it.
Mhm.
And so
Hmm.
in the investigation, the lady that was doing his autopsy had written a great deal about that in the
Right.
investigation. And so, I mean, I'm picking the investigation apart and going, this doesn't match. You know, this isn't, this doesn't make sense, And so but it's hard to put things together when so much is redacted and there's no names. There's only, um, um, titles of rank,
Wow.
to
So,
see. Yeah.
did you ever have an opportunity, like, what was it when you first saw the initial, like, what were they sending you initially versus what you had to get with Congress? Like, initially, they just sent over their version of an investigation, and that's when you're like, "All this is redacted. Why is all this stuff redacted?" I mean, is that kind of what your first initial
Yeah.
response was?
Well, I mean, they give you all the reasons why they have to redact things. They give you a whole, like, a couple pages of why the reason they have to redact things are. It's kind of funny because it's the reason they have to redact things is so they can protect their own asses. But anyway, but that's basically what they're telling you
Mhm.
in
Sure.
their preface, Um, and but yeah, so um, it was a couple years before I could really get down to where anybody would listen to me. Worked with Jody Arrington initially right off the bat because he's from our area. Um, he's our congressman over our area, and he did an amazing job probing and asking questions. And he's been along for the ride since the very beginning, and he's my hero because we've already gotten another bill passed that has to do with the reason they denied our medical malpractice claim. But anyway, there's so many rabbit
So
trails
many
here,
like trails
honestly.
to this. So I think I just want to go back to what kind
Mhm,
of happened because we're at the part where he is in and out of the hospital. He's being turned away,
mhm.
and there's some sort of a loose checking up on him, but it sounds like he was in really, really bad shape and he should have been in the emergency. He should have been admitted.
Absolutely.
It should have been
Well,
admitted.
they should have taken his blood. If they could have looked at his blood, they may would have caught, this acute bacterial meningitis
Hmm.
that he had a vaccine for, you know. Uh,
Right. Sure.
like,
Sure.
but I mean, you know how the flu and everything else goes. You have to have that vaccine for that particular version
Right.
of it, whatever,
Particular strain. And even
Yeah,
if you do have a vaccine for something, as we saw with COVID, doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get that viral infection.
for
So,
sure.
so this goes on, and then they estimate
Yeah.
that for 6 days, that's the part that I just don't understand is
Okay.
how did they for 6 full days not know what was going on
Right.
with
Well,
him?
and the reason I'm coming up with 6.5 days is that his body was too decomposed to be viewed at his funeral. His roommate is spraying Febreze to cover up the smell of his dead body, and you count from the day that he entered the room for the last time all the way to the 21st of January, and you see that it's 6.5 days. Um, and it just doesn't make sense,
Well,
when
what
you.
doesn't make sense is that, I mean, okay, there's a weekend. Okay, no one's checking up on him on a weekend, but
So it
during
was
the
a
week,
4 day
okay,
Martin Luther King holiday.
hmm, okay,
And so, I mean, put two and two together, most of these guys are going to be out partying, which is exactly what they were doing. And if you haven't already heard about the Fort Bragg um, drug epidemic, it makes a lot of sense when you look at what's happening with the drug epidemic
hmm,
on base at Fort Bragg that they can't seem to control. They have soldiers like Enrique Roman Martinez getting his head chopped off, literally, and his family had to go down and find it because they weren't going to go look for him.
wow.
And so, and here's Caleb. They're just, it's basic accountability. It's basic accountability. And they left him in there till the 21st of January, and they didn't go even to find him until the afternoon of the 21st of January, about 2:30 in the afternoon. He'd
Hmm.
missed morning formation, he'd missed morning PT, he'd missed a doctor's appointment, and he'd missed work in the motor pool. And they did
So
not go and,
this is on a Tuesday, right? So because Monday was
yeah,
Martin Luther King Day, so this was on a Tuesday,
mhm,
and they waited till 2 o'clock. So not even that morning did they
right.
check on him. Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
Hey,
and
I'd have to say this though. I think about that, and I think about myself having been a teacher, and I think about accountability, and I think about how many families would be seriously like wanting to have my head and my job and everything else had I made a infraction of this nature, or even just like kid, I was a art teacher for a long time, I'm like, I have this cutting board, like you think about the accountability there, and then it doesn't make sense, to the accountability that's plays out in the military, the civilian world and the military world. We should be the barometer for what's normal in the
right.
civilian world, and what they're doing is just continually um,
Well,
hiding behind.
what gets me is there was a record that he
redactions.
was sick. Like, this wasn't before going into Martin Luther King weekend, he
That's
was
it.
in bad shape, and is somebody I think even commented on here who's also heard the audio. She says the audio is heartbreaking,
Yeah.
where he was talking to somebody at the time saying how sick he was. And my question would be is where were his supervisors? Were there any was there any record that his bosses at the motor pool had called his cell phone
No.
or stopped by the barracks
Mm-mm.
or
And that's why I've
anything?
said the whole time, leadership needs to be held accountable.
Mhm.
I mean, you're the leader. And, even, and here's the deal, as a sergeant, they're in control maybe of like about 8 people, 8 to 10 people in a unit or whatever. Look, as a teacher, I was in control of like 500 students.
Sure.
And it doesn't make sense. 8 to 10 people, well, they all had an excuse for some reason. The most culpable have supposedly been disciplined. But that wasn't until I had the Army Secretary reopened Caleb's case and discovered all of the craziness, all of the discrepancies that I lined out all the discrepancies that I could see in a very long letter that I had Jody Arrington with Ted Cruz created a letter
Mhm.
um, to this Army secretary asking for her to please, and this is back when Christine Wormuth was our Army secretary, and Donna Martin.
I believe this is this is you. Let me see if I have the picture right here. I believe this is you with Ted Cruz right here,
There's
correct?
Mr. Ted Cruz, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, telling you what, man, this whole thing has just been so epic as far as just like me going, as a teacher, I have my lunch break, leave for lunch break, go home, start calling senators, start calling Congress people,
Mhm.
representatives, to get a meeting with them in person in DC, because I know like it makes more of an impression if you can see somebody face to face. And I realized through this process that, the gift of education was really the key, honestly, because of course this stuff just makes you want to unravel and just hate the world. But I could put a smile on my face if I understood that it came down to education, and it sucks that I have to be the one to educate, being the mother, but it's okay. That's all right. Like I see it, it's right here in my view, in my peripheral. It's all around me 360. And so,
How did you get awareness on this at first, though? Because I bet as soon as this happened, you just got this redacted report and nobody was going to do anything more. So tell me what some of your initial first steps are, because I think this could help a lot of other advocates.
okay, well, honestly, there's a lot of steps there.
Or maybe just the first couple things you
Yeah.
did.
Well, exactly. Uh, I would say that my saving grace was the other military families. I would say Terry and Patrick Caserta of the Brandon Act. Um, they found me first by a post that I had made, um, kind of just lining out like some of my questions about the discrepancies. But first of all, I didn't get Caleb's even his autopsy report until like 9 months later. So I was like left in the dark for almost, close to a year almost. And so, but the power of putting my story out there and asking my community questions and having the support of my congressman. Um, I mean, we didn't even know what we were supporting yet. We were just trying to find some answers. Um, that really helped me a lot. As if I would give anybody any kind of advice, is you've got to talk to your congressman, congresswoman, whoever's in charge there. You have to talk to these people, because that's how it works.
Were they responsive
Yeah.
the first time you reached out on this issue?
Jody Arrington, he called me at 10 o'clock at night, the second night Caleb had passed away. Caleb,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it was just an absolute miracle. He said, well, first of all, the trouble is that they were going to make me wait 3 weeks to get his body home. And that didn't make sense to me. Why would they be waiting 3 weeks to get his body home? Well, they didn't tell me until a whole week later. They waited an entire week to tell my casualty assistance officer that Caleb's body was too decomposed to be viewable. So that was their way of biding time, whatever, to figure out what they were going to say to me, I guess. But
I mean, this whole thing just sounds like a cover up, Heather, and it's frustrating because what if they had just been honest about everything from the get go?
I know.
Even when, and it's almost like you're making more mistake after more mistake when you lie or when you cover up or you obfuscate the truth. You just create more lies or you
Well, the
create
crazy thing is that I'm, a teacher and I get paid to see through lies every day as a teacher. So it's
right.
like my casualty assistance officer kept telling them, Mrs. Baker, she's smart. Like, you guys, like, she's seeing through all of y'all's crap right now, and just letting you know, she sees it. And anyway, I mean, I had a great casualty assistance officer. He just I try not to bother or pester him because he finally retired, but I mean, I don't want to drag him into any of this. I want him to be able to retire and be at peace, So,
Well, I'm sure
but he
he
is
was
now.
part of the he was part of one of the people hopefully that was trying to figure out answers. And
Oh,
who do
he
you
was, man.
who
He was letting me know, like, hey, there's some things that are not kosher, that are not, matching up, to his excellence, and that I wanted to say this, like, we've probably got some bad commands out there, but we have a lot of good ones,
we do.
a lot of good ones. And and that's why I'm like so inspired by you. Like, I see how you're leading from the top, and even after retirement, like, you've got a smile on your face, you're truly living, and it's inspirational. We need people like you to inspire the youth, like these kids, like you are their hero, you know what I mean? Like, and it takes people like you to invest in their lives, and like see something unique and golden about them and go, hey,
Yeah.
check this out, and be just inspirational. Like I said, I see you like working out and like taking care of yourself, that is incredibly inspiring, and you do it with a happy face, uh,
And some little bit of back pain. I actually had to have a steroid shot today, unfortunately. I broke
that's
down.
okay.
But
That's all right. That's all right.
I
I have
also think that's part of
dystonia,
aging.
so
It's part of the aging process. Unfortunately, you're
it
probably not going to
is.
be pain free as you get older, but you got to work
Yeah.
through it and still try
The
to be
beautiful
healthy.
pain.
But what I also really want to know too is that I think there's some really good things to pull from this, and that is the way your community rallied around you. I mean, I see it here in the comments. There are so many people who, even as we're talking, are tuning in and providing
Oh, good. I
feedback
love
and
you guys so
providing
much.
information. And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about the military either, Delirious brought it up, and I've talked about it on my show before, which
Hi,
is
girl.
which is that Congress must overturn the Ferris Doctrine. I mean, the Ferris
Yes.
Doctrine, for people who don't know what that is you can't, well, somebody is impacted on active duty. Unfortunately, they have no rights to sue the Department of Defense for damages. And so that includes medical malpractice, unfortunately. And so if you've got a botched surgery or something goes wrong in the emergency room, like what happened with Lauren Palladini, unfortunately, she's not eligible for anything other than a claim. So, and that brings up a
Right.
good question for you, Heather. Are you still eligible to go through the Army claims process for a wrongful death?
Well, we did go through that process, and they initially denied me the claim because there was an independent contractor. Um, they said was working at the Womack Army Medical Center. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Independent contractor. Well, and then they didn't tell me until after the statute of limitations had run out. And so one of the things that Jody Arrington and I worked on was to make sure that that hole was plugged. And that they have to tell families when there isn't when there is a independent contractor involved, and they have to tell them within a, respectful amount of time. Um, and so we had a, law written about that in the National Defense Authorization Act.
So if I'm understanding right, because of the fact that an independent contractor who worked at the hospital
Yep.
was the one who treated Caleb, because of that, you were not eligible for
Right.
a claim to file a claim of medical malpractice because
Yeah.
of that information, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, because it isn't like you have any control as a military member. Like, oh, you go to the Army hospital and you say, oh, I only want to see the ones who are working for the
Exactly.
Department of Defense. I don't want to see any independent contractor, because if I see that person, then if something happens, I won't be eligible for a claim.
That's right.
Like, you won't even think to ask that question.
There's no, and how would you know to ask that question?
Right.
And do you even know about the Ferris Doctrine?
Right.
Like,
Well, I
if you're in the
didn't.
military, you
No,
don't.
I didn't. In fact, it wasn't until I became a podcaster that I learned
Yeah.
about the Ferris Doctrine.
Mhm.
So I had shoulder surgery not knowing
Yeah.
about the Ferris Doctrine. Now, what I would maybe I would have still gotten it, but I would have liked to have at least known that there was no recourse if a mistake were to
Exactly.
happen. I would
And I
like to
think
know
that's
that.
why it's important for me, for families that have kids going into the military and want to go into the military, this time-honored tradition, to know about the Ferris Doctrine,
You should
to
know about the Ferris
know about
Doctrine.
the
And you
medical
should know about the.
claims.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was just saying, like, it's important, I think, for them to know about the Ferris Doctrine, what their rights are and what their rights are not, and to know about the claims process. These are things that you find out until you just don't have any clue. I thought we took the best care of our service members. Holy cow, do I know different now? I hear and see what happens in our VA and hospitals, and I've talked to many veterans, and I've talked to many folks that are in, serving now. And I hear people say, even that they've been turned away from the Womack Army Medical Center. So it's not, I'm not making this up, I'm reading it I'm deducing what happened to my son. And I'm also listening to other people that have reached out to me, cried out to me.
I'm pretty sure that it was Lauren Palladini who was seen at the Womack Army Medical Center as well. So I think that you're now the second person.
So is Richard Stay School, the namesake of the Stay School Act, which is a amendment to the Ferris Doctrine.
Right. Right. And
And
my
that's the
understanding
claims
is
process.
he was even
And
denied.
he was denied his medical malpractice claim.
Yes. That's just incredible.
Now, I will say that we did go back after they denied the claim. I had a medical doctor look at his medical records, his real medical records. And that's where they discovered all the stuff they were trying to cover up. The fact that his blood pressure was getting worse and not better. He was running a fever, couldn't keep down food, water. They in fact told him to not drink anything, not to drink any water, and he threw up, and this is while he's in, the ER. And so once we just started discovering some of these things, the doctor that viewed his medical records actually messaged me and sent me a picture of his signature. And she said in the note, it said that the nurse had to guide his hand to the line so that he could sign himself out of the ER. And that picture made me cry for like 30 minutes because it was just chicken scratch.
That's just so sad. And
It
so
broke my
raw.
heart when I saw that. And he, Caleb and I had been trying to meet up to talk. And his first brigade was coming back into the United States, employing, and second brigade was about to deploy. And he was in second brigade combat team. He had just gotten there on Thanksgiving Day of 2019, and 7 weeks later he was dead. But
Wow.
yeah, it's unbelievable. His colonel, when I met his colonel on base at Fort Bragg for his memorial, his colonel told me, Colonel Scotty Otan, told me that he takes the best care of his paratroopers and that he treats them like family. And then, 9 months later, when I started unraveling all this and discovering the truth, and, I confronted him and I said, hey, you didn't check on him. And he said, yes, ma'am, we did. But I will tell you that whenever I had the Army Secretary, Christine E. Wormuth, so kindly reopened Caleb's case, she discovered that that was just not the truth. In fact, she told me the first thing she did was walk up to me and told me, ma'am, I'm sorry the Army failed you and your son. And she let me play for her like an 8-minute video. I think I sent it to you.
Yes, you did.
I played that for her, just a synopsis of Caleb's life. And I told her, I said, ma'am, nobody checked on my son. And she said, Miss Baker, she reached her hand across the table and she said, Miss Baker, I want to let you know that nobody checked on your son. And I said, ma'am, I needed to hear you say that.
How sad is it that that's the person that had to own it too?
Well, I'm just but
It
that
becomes a big
shows a
CYA
lot of
game.
honor,
It
honestly.
does on her part.
On her
Absolutely.
part, it absolutely doesn't. It's despicable on his command's part that they can't be more of a soldier,
They can't be
quite
more
honestly.
human and say we failed and we're sorry
Yeah,
because all
true.
they're
It's
thinking about is lawsuits.
humankind. It's just an act of human kindness, really, to just check on somebody. It's the simplest, thing that you can do. And it's something that we can all learn from, but
Well,
it's
tell me a little bit. It sounds like you were able to get some legislation passed about the contractor issue and making
yes.
sure that people are informed. And
Mhm.
if they are informed, they have the option to what does that mean? Like by being informed, what does that give them?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what and that's the hard part about creating laws, right? It's like you want to know, like, how does that actually look?
Yeah,
So
like
what are you actually gonna do? I don't mean to ride you here on this, but
yeah, like if we're
let's
going to
take
pass
this to the
this
next
bill,
step here.
what does it really lead to? Yeah.
I think the answer is that it's written in the Senate Armed Service Committee's conference report, and that means that they're supposed to be asking the Army, so how's that going?
I see.
And so, but it takes a lot of prying and a lot of emails and a lot of meeting with people to find out like what that really means and and how does that look? What does that look like? Tell me more about this, Um, and so it's just a constant process of inquiring. And here I am 6 years later, still inquiring. We've got and so gratefully that law was written. But yeah, it's like
Let's
there's
find
so
out that
many.
if a contractor does operate or
Mhm.
does see a service member, what does that mean now? And then more, uh, what does
Well,
that afford?
unfortunately, we can't take away the contractors because there's just not enough Army military doctors that are actually certified.
Right. But then why can't the
So.
claims process cover the contractors as well? I would say then
Well,
if
I think the claims process is working out to be another, just red tape, a scene of red tape.
yeah,
Somehow I was able to actually get through, this my second route, when I had the independent when I had the medical doctor look at his medical history, um, we were able to find some things that, point blank said medical malpractice, and so we were able to we actually won that claim
Good.
this last year, and so
That's a win. That is a
it
win.
is. But the thing is, now that I was hoping, what I was hoping that it would do would make more way for more families to have some success, and have some justice. But actually, what it did is it shut the whole door. It seems, because my attorney, Daniel Maharaj, has spoken to me about many other cases that he has tried to push and inquire about, and they're basically just shutting the door.
Wow.
So
Shame.
it's very confusing to me, and I don't understand it. But I know that there are some people that are in office now that uh, hopefully can, get more answers than I can.
Yep. And push it to the next level. So tell me a little bit about the SMIDI check. Like, what is that going to do?
Well, I think
Or
that's the best part. It is the SMIDI check is what has needed to happen. It's written in the creeds. It's written in the NCO creed, where it talks about, not leaving, uh, you know, a soldier behind, and that your soldiers are the most important part of your job.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have 8 to 10 of them that you're in control, you're leading.
Sure. Sure.
Um, but the SMIDI check is a face-to-face check. It's a accountability check, and
Is it a
it
requirement for the chain of command to each day do something to check in with a soldier service
well,
member?
what it
Like,
is it's not necessarily it's um, and I think that from the Army standpoint, they have written this new Army policy, which is another thing that the Army Secretary gave to me that day. Not only did she confirm what I knew to be true, was that nobody checked on Caleb, she also let me know that she reopened Caleb's case, and she had disciplined some people, and the most culpable people had already left the Army. But she also handed me a new Army policy, um, an accountability policy, and in that policy, she specifies a bunch of things, but most importantly, I think, is that it was sent to the TRADOC, their training program. It was sent to every department of the Army, which was impressive. But it also, the most important part to me is that we connect the dots on uh, a face-to-face check versus a virtual check.
mm-hmm.
Reaching out through telephonic means, if they're not responding through telephonic means of some nature, then you have to go and find that person face to face, and not just knock on their door and be like, well, they're not here. Like, if they're not there, then why aren't they there? Caleb's roommate thought that Caleb had gone out of town. Well, are you kidding me? He didn't even have a car.
Right.
Like he couldn't even go get groceries, unless it was like at the, convenience store or whatever, the closest little spot for him to get some, junk food.
Sure. Sure.
And within walking distance. So, but and then he's spraying Febreze to cover up this really peculiar smell, and I'm like, thinking to myself, like, a dead rat smells pretty bad. Like, you can smell roaches and things like that. So, like, a dead body that's putrefied and mummified, that's in the 5th stage of decomposition, you're just throwing some Febreze on top of that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
unacceptable. Absolutely
yeah.
unacceptable. And it's
So
unacceptable that the people who were retired were not held accountable. I look at it like, if Pete Hegseth can hold Senator Kelly responsible for a video with letter of censor. I mean, that's really where this goes, right?
I
Like if he
agree
can
with
do
you.
that, all
I
right.
agree with you. When I heard that, I was like, are you kidding
Like, if he
me?
can do that for something so in my view, so petty
So,
because it was petty. The guy, I get why he said it, but he didn't, in my opinion. I'm not going to get too political, but he didn't say anything illegal, saying you should not follow unlawful orders. That is a legal thing to say to somebody.
mhm.
And but let's just take it out of that. You're going to write a letter of censure. You're going to recall him back to active duty from retirement for a video. But the people who were responsible for not checking up on your son, they just get to retire. I mean, it blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a real gut punch. It's heartbreaking, and it doesn't make sense why you can't pull these people back in. And here's the deal: they were given a chance to be a part of that investigation, the reopen investigation, and they declined based on their representative, their attorney's uh, advice.
Right, they
And
were
so,
worried about being sued, and I but see, and this is the world we live in, sadly, because you can't get answers to what really happened because everybody's running scared, because we've turned into a litigious society of lawfare instead of a society where hard conversations can happen.
yeah,
And mistakes were made, yes, and accountability needs to happen, yes. But at the same time, that accountability should still be able to happen without the threat of lawfare or bankruptcy or lifetime in prison. There has to be
yeah,
some balance there, so that
absolutely,
you get the answers that you need. The people can learn from their mistakes, and
absolutely.
we can do better going forward.
I mean, they could have just, if they could have just been honest about it from the very beginning. My heart is to forgive. My heart is to love and to help. I just wanted us to learn from our mistake, but now that we're running away from the truth, now that puts things a little differently. That
Right.
makes me go, oh, let me pursue this a little bit further. Then,
Yeah, exactly.
I I
Mhm.
I I would love to put this whole thing to rest. I really would, but I just can't
Not if people are
because
covering it up. I
not if people are covering it up. And here's the deal: is however they treated Caleb's case is how they're going to treat your son or your daughter's case, and that's a fact.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and
You know,
that's why you gotta keep talking about it. That's why
yeah.
you have to see this through, no matter how long it takes, and I
Well, and what
think
kind of thing? I just think about myself, like just sitting over in Lubbock, Texas. My feet up, like picking, my teeth with a cactus or something. Like, I mean, how dare I? How dare I? Like, if I know the truth and I know something that could help somebody else, and there's a red flag, and then I better get on it, man. I better
yeah,
get on it. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not that kind of person to just go, well, that happened, and it's the military, and I'm gonna just believe everything they say. And I had to sit through very uncomfortable moments of me standing up to these people with all these I call it fruit salad, no disrespect, but
sure, sure.
it just looks like Clownville after a while, and you're a teacher, you've been, you're a professional educator, you're, veteran yourself,
Yeah. You
teaching
just want
everybody
people to
else's
do
kids.
you just want people to do the right thing, and sometimes, sadly, it's difficult to get them
It's the
to
world we live in.
but
Look at Washington D.C. right now. Oh my
I know,
God.
I know. It's we
Don't
can't
look,
we
but look.
Well, I mean, we have a society where people can't even listen to people that they disagree with. I'm being attacked relentlessly for having Daniel Gade on, who is a person who does not believe that some veterans deserve the disability benefits that they have. It's a very controversial topic, yes, but should we listen to him? Yes, we should.
Yeah.
Because guess what? He's got the ear of Congress. He's testifying in the Senate. So let's listen to where he's coming from and have another opinion. But you know what happened?
Hmm.
I got attacked relentlessly in my YouTube video about it, which I'm okay with. I mean, I knew that it was a controversial issue, and I knew that I would get attacked. But it's just reflection of the fact that we can't have hard conversations because
Hmm.
people just want to, like, curl up and, oh no, we can't talk about these things. No, we
They
need to
can't
talk about
answer
these
hard
things.
questions.
No,
They
no.
can't answer them. And that I've been asking very simple, point blank questions for 6 years, and still, here's the deal: is you know, they thought I was really stupid. They first of all redacted Caleb's death scene photos from the investigation. I'm like, hello there, hi. I would like to see those photos, please. Oh, but we don't want to cause you any more pain, suffering, all the pain and suffering. Hand them over. Thank you very much. Well, they finally did, but they sent it over um, it's, well, first of all, the file was encrypted, right? And so then there's these, it's just a picture. Oh, that was sorry, the autopsy was the encrypted part. So they sent me over just the document. They didn't want me to have it in to where I could make the picture bigger or anything like that. So it's just like 4 pages of maybe like 2-inch photos, right? All in black and white.
Wow.
Yeah, and so his autopsy photos were the ones I was saying that were on an encrypted disk. I had to have some help opening those for the first time because I didn't want to see anything that I didn't need to see.
Sure.
Of course, now I've seen them all, but just because I needed to just see it, just needed to go, okay, what the hell? let's just cut the crap here, like what's really happening here. But it really showed me there's more to it. There's still more to it. And because what I can see in the photo is in the autopsy photo, there's blood smeared across his mouth. And I think to myself, why would there be blood smeared across his mouth if he died of acute bacterial meningitis? You don't bleed out. You don't with acute bacterial meningitis. But there's other things that can cause you to bleed out like that. And in the black and white photos, you can clearly see a giant black stain underneath Caleb's body. It's not a blanket.
Wow.
So
So there's
I
just
don't,
a lot of
I,
unanswered
I'm,
questions, a lot of
yeah,
things
there's a lot of
uh,
crazy stuff. Yeah.
that's still not clear. And I can only hope, Heather, that as time goes by, you get those answers. And I
I hope
think that
so.
you just being public with your story will help somebody else because sadly, this might
Man, I
happen
hope
or some
so.
sort of a similar situation might happen. And at least people know that you're out there and that you fought this fight. And I really, really applaud you for having the courage to come on here and to share what has happened and to just
Well,
keep fighting. And the things
okay.
that you're doing now today. I mean, you've got the dog training business. You're doing
Yes.
so you've taken something that is so tragic and you've turned it into something that is healing. And
It's,
that's what I wanted to
mhm.
kind of end with was what how has this made you different from where you were before this
Oh
happened?
man, it has changed my zip code. I am a completely different human than I once was, but I think what it has caused me to do is either you can live or die, you know, through grief and tragedy. And the best part is when you can truly live, when you can decide and make a decision to truly live. And what does that look like for each one of us? It's a little different, but for me, I started off with, here's little old Heather, just like, hey, by herself. Like I felt like I needed to look a little bigger, so I went and got my concealed carry license and just learned a little bit. And then I started learning a little bit more. And then I got an invite to go check out some competitive shooting. And that was amazing and dynamic, and you could actually work through mag changes and squibs and things like that, like bullets get stuck in a chamber, like you think on your feet and you have adrenaline running through you, and you really get to hash out like what it means to be a carrier, and
Yeah,
and
there's some power in that. In fact, it's funny you say that
yeah,
because next
very
week
empowering.
I'm having a person who believes in safe gun ownership and is really invested in even teaching these kinds of practices within inner cities, within low cost income areas, within the community. And I really can't wait to have him on. So,
Well, yeah, I
he'll,
see, because it's extremely empowering. Now, the dogs, I, I really, just had always loved working dogs. I've always loved dog training. I can't say that I was very good at it. I didn't know a lot about it, I guess, when I first started. But what I did was I said, I want a Belgian Malinois. And so I found a trainer that said, "Do you really want a Belgian Malinois?
yeah, those are hard dogs.
Let me let you know like how this actually works." And so actually, I worked with a trainer before I got my own dog, and um, would go to classes and work that dog, and take some guidance and everything. The dog was trained in German, and it was just like a whole new world for me. And so I realized that this was it, man. Like, I really want one. So we started looking for a Belgian Malinois. I needed something to get me out of bed, to give me something fun to do with life instead of just sitting at home by myself, you know? And so
Sure.
it just, Caleb, the name Caleb means dog, and it just means loyal. And it goes back to me like, there's a quick story real quick. I want to share the story of Caleb in
Oh,
his airborne training. His last, it was the last hill in Fort Benning when you're getting your airborne wings. And they're running up this hill with all their gear on and everything. And this young lady who had served with Caleb came to find me at his memorial, and she said, "Ma'am,
oh, I think we lost you, Heather. We lost you on camera, and then we lost you on the audio as well. But if she doesn't come back here, I'll probably have to close out the call without the story, which is really unfortunate. But what I want to do is thank all of you for taking the time to join us and to hear this very hard story, but this very important story of accountability, of truth, of advocacy. And it's something that we need to be having these conversations, and we need to be showing a light on these issues because they sadly will not change unless we have the courage to speak up about them. So I want to thank Heather so much for the opportunity for me to share her story with all of you. And if you have any questions about the SMIDI check, please, please, please reach out to Heather. She has a lot of information about this issue, and she's really paved the way when it comes to the claims process within the Department of Defense, which is the only way, unfortunately, at this point, that we can have any kind of restitution when these kinds of incidences happen, especially in the medical malpractice world. So, with that, I think I will sign off if we don't get Heather back here. But I want to, as I always do, thank all of you for taking the time to join us on this podcast tonight. Another hard episode, as I do a lot of these kinds of episodes, but I believe that they're very important. And I believe in giving people like Heather a voice. So, with that, as I always say, please. Oh, I think I got her back. Hold on just one second. Let's go back to that story, Heather. I'm going to add you back to the stage.
okay.
All right. So tell us again about
So
that.
sorry, guys. Um, so this was such a precious memory moment. This young lady, this young paratrooper walks up to me at Caleb's memorial, and she says, "Miss Baker, I just wanted to let you know that I owe Caleb my airborne wings." And I said, "No, you do not, ma'am." Little lady. And she said, "But I do." And she was crying, and she told me that, in the formation, when they're running, it's like, the leadership, upper leadership is at the front of formation, and then the women and, um, like the PVs are at
Sure,
the back,
sure.
and she said that she had remembered Caleb Fort Benning, or no, Fort Leonard Wood, actually. They were at Fort Leonard Wood, in AIT. And I think she was in upper leadership above him. And, she just recognized him. And then when they got to airborne school, it was one of those, I recognize you, right? Well, anyway, they're in that last formation run up this giant hill. And she said that she starts falling back and is behind. And she said he came around her and pushed her up in front of him and said, "Ma'am, don't quit now. You got this."
Wow.
And that
Wow.
is, like, she said that she could feel his knuckles in her through the backpack, kind of adding pressure to her as she was running up this hill so that she could make it up the hill. And what a beautiful picture of what the SMIDI check really is. It's just about checking on people and going back the extra
Yeah.
mile. Take a moment to be human and to make a connection with somebody. Everybody needs somebody, and we can all learn from this. And whether the SMIDI check passes or any of this stuff ever happens, like I want it to, other people held accountable and etc. The fact of the matter is that we're all human and we all need somebody to cheer us on and to have our back. And, the battle buddy system is a battle buddy system for a reason. And so we just need to reconnect. We don't all come from the same kind of household experiences. We don't have the same history. And so it's, working in the military, I never was in the military, but I just know as a parent, and in basic training, they have you supported, they have the families write letters and things like that. And we think, oh yeah, okay, that's done, but it's never done. Like there's so much support, working in the military. You've got to have the support, from your people.
Yes,
And
you do. And I think
I
that you're a connector, Heather. I do. I mean, I'm seeing so many people who've joined throughout the call tonight. I mean, Matthew, was talking earlier. It's Leadership 101. Jennifer, she's been on the call. Thank you for having Heather on this
love you,
podcast.
Jennifer.
So there's been also Cindy said she loved you as well. Cindy Darknell said love you, Heather.
Yes.
So
Yes, I love these people. My community has definitely backed me, and the people that I have met through this tragedy, other families, we share a bond. We share a connection. Having a soldier or service member that dies non-combat is very different than having someone that dies as a hero. But Caleb, he's a young man that died by the hands of his heroes.
I was going to say, and he sounded like a hero. That's that
But
story
he
you
was,
shared with me.
yeah. And I just I think about you as a leader and a hero to me, and you're being that, for so many others right now. And by just by just using your voice and letting other people have a say. And you're right, we need to be able to learn how to have conversations and natural conversations, and you make it very easy to do that. And so I'm just hoping that our current service members can find some way to connect. And, they used to call it oak tree counseling. We're just calling it a face-to-face check. It's a SMIDI check. And I would say, who doesn't love a SMIDI?
No, I
So
love it.
Caleb's nickname was SMIDI, and so it just makes sense. So I got my hat
Heather,
on.
I love it. I know. I saw. And then I think I found, I made sure to put up this picture here. I think I still have it up here. Let's see, right here. Add to stage. There we go. SMIDI check.
Yes,
So,
yes.
all right,
That
Heather.
was at
Well,
the
it's been
Martin Luther King monument in DC.
oh, Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to show all the images during the
That's
show,
okay.
but
Thanks for having me on, guys.
I love the opportunity to talk with you. You're such an inspiration, and I'll meet you backstage very quickly to say goodbye. But I'm going to go full screen and do my closing, even though I already kind of did it. But thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you so
And
much. Love you
we will
guys.
definitely keep in touch. And we love you. All right, guys, that's a wrap for tonight. This is my only podcast this week. Next week, I think I have 2. So please stay tuned. I'll have a couple promos coming to you. As I always do, like I said earlier, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And even if we disagree, let's all please remember that we're humans and kindness matters. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a wonderful night.